This is madness, ladies and gentlemen. We are going for the third show review in a row. I've never done this before. We just did the Raw and NXT review back to back, and now we're here to talk about AEW Dynamite. So, watch this week's Raw, NXT, and AEW Dynamite review in order, and you'll just see a slow progression of me. That's a fun thing to do, right? Take a drink every time I slip up on my words or something. I don't know. Have some fun, laugh at my pain. It's all good. Let's talk about AEW Dynamite, which was a crazy cool show, man. I gotta say, the past 3 nights of pro wrestling have been awesome in their own unique ways, right? You got Monday Night Raw, which is the flagship show of WWE, holding it down and crafting a bunch of new stories. You got NXT just showing the potential of new talent and really holding their own with the collaboration of TNA and what have you. And then you have AEW Dynamite, which opens up with MJF versus Will Ospreay for the AEW International Championship. And this doesn't happen all too often. Don't get me wrong; it's happened once or twice before, maybe even 3 times. But the opening match, MJF versus Will Ospreay for this international championship, ends up going almost an hour, like 58 minutes, 59 minutes, literally, right? These championship matches in AEW have a 60-minute time limit, but very rarely do we see them get this close and almost break an hour. This literally went into 7 o'clock, damn near, as MJF defeated Will Ospreay for the international championship, and MJF is your new AEW international champion. Can't believe I'm saying that, man. It's madness. But this was one of the coolest matches I've seen in a while. Everybody knows how good MJF is, and even still, he's still wildly underrated, even though we all know how that doesn't even make sense, but it does make sense, man. We all respect and understand how great MJF is, and even then, he is still underrated AF. Yeah, your new AEW International Champion is MJF, and we'll see what comes of this. I think we will see maybe a triple threat between Will Ospreay, MJF, and Daniel Garcia. I know Will Ospreay is going to want his championship back. I know Daniel Garcia is not happy with MJF. When he gets better, he's going to come back and want a piece of MJF. So we're going to see what's leading to All In because this is super crazy. This is super interesting. I guess MJF had a lot more to lose in losing this match than Will Ospreay did. But so that's why they went there and gave MJF the championship here to open up AEW Dynamite. But nonetheless, man, they sure worked for it. This wasn't no 20-minute match. This was a spectacle. This is going to be remembered as one of the greatest matches of the year, unless people hate on it for no reason. It was good wrestling. I know it was long, but it was good. Let's move on. Backstage, we actually get the Acclaimed asking Mark Briscoe formally to be a part of Team AEW. And they're just dragging this along. Like, dude, we already know the Acclaimed are going to be in this blood and guts match next week. But nonetheless, man, Swerve Strickland and Mark Briscoe formally appoint the Acclaimed as part of Team AEW for next week's blood and guts match. You know what's funny, guys? I'm gonna veer off track a little bit. I always think about like because my friend doesn't really watch pro wrestling, but he watches my videos just because he's a cool dude and he supports. I always wonder how crazy I sound just saying all these things. Like it just if you don't watch pro wrestling and you watch my videos, you must think I'm talking nonsense. Like this must just sound like a Scrabble board of sentences for you. So that's hilarious. If you're watching this right now and you don't really watch pro wrestling, I kind of envy like how confused you must be by the words that I'm saying. Watch pro wrestling. Anyways, next man, we get Chris Jericho and his little faction of Brian Keith and um Big Bill. He's had so many different names. And we get these 3 guys coming out for another segment of TV time with the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho, which is a fantastic gimmick. Dude, I don't want to like Chris Jericho right now. I want to think he's a douche because he kind of is, but I can't help but see this gimmick that he's got going on and love it. I love to hate on it because that's what it's meant to be. But it's hilarious, man. I think Chris Jericho is doing some good work right now, and I can't believe I'm even saying that. Nonetheless, during this segment of the learn of TV time with the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho, we have we have Minoru Suzuki come out and interrupt Chris Jericho and make it clear that next week, Chris Jericho will defend the FTW championship against Minoru Suzuki, and Brian Keith nor Big Bill will be able to interfere with that match. So next week we'll have Chris Jericho defend that FTW championship. And I would love to see Suzuki win this, but I do think, Chris Jericho will find a way to retain. Like I said, you got to love to hate this gimmick that Jericho's putting on because that's what it's meant for. Really cool stuff. Not the coolest stuff, but it's fine. It's honestly, I like the learning tree gimmick more than I liked all the other gimmicks that he's done in AEW. Honestly, like to me, it's that good. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that. Whatever. Coming up on the end here, guys, we actually had Mercedes Moné versus Nyla Rose, and the TBS championship was on the line. Mercedes Moné gets an impressive victory here and continues her good work in AEW. And Britt Baker actually comes out to attack Mercedes Moné, which is ultimately probably leading to a championship match at All in Wembley Stadium. And nonetheless, man, security separates the two of them. It was kind of funny, and I don't like to nitpick too much, but like Mercedes Moné was running away from Britt Baker, and then security was trying to act like they were trying to hold her back, even though she was already running away. It was just like a quick little frame of awkwardness between Mercedes Moné and the security. Not a big deal. It made me laugh a little bit. That's all. It's all good. But nonetheless, man, Mercedes Moné defends her TBS championship on AEW Dynamite here. Continues to do good work. She actually was in a backstage segment with the Elite here before the match. And the Young Bucks tell Mercedes, like, hey, Okada wants to see you do the money dance. And after she does the money dance, Okada gets all nervous and sweaty. Looks like Okada's got the hots for Mercedes Moné. And that is freaking hilarious. I'm not going to lie. We got two more segments here, man. Like I said, the first hour of AEW Dynamite was MJF versus Will Ospreay. So this is a bit of a short review. We're kind of flying through it right now. We had Mariah May come out, and we didn't know it was Mariah May because it was the Toni Storm gimmick that she was in with the Toni Storm music. So it looked like Timeless Toni Storm, but after a couple seconds, we were like, oh, it's Mariah May, who just beat the shit out of Timeless Toni Storm to close out last week's AEW Dynamite. And she basically gives her justification for why she did what she did. You know, she can become so much more than Toni Storm's accomplice, so much more than Toni Storm herself. So she decided to create a blood feud and beat up Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Championship on the biggest stage possible, which is All in Wembley Stadium. And that's all she does here is explain that and explain why she turned on Toni Storm and all this good stuff. The money was in the entrance itself, where she was basically being Toni Storm's doppelganger. But yeah, super interesting stuff here. I'm very excited for Toni Storm versus Mariah May. I think it's a slept-on feud. I think it went from 0 to 100 so freaking quickly, and I think that was the right way to go about it. I'm excited to see this match in London. Last but not least, we got the main event, which is another good main event, guys. We had Kazuchika Okada taking on AEW World Champion Swerve Strickland. Here we have the AEW Continental Champion taking on the AEW World Champion. I really like what they're doing with Swerve here as they're having him defeat and take on these other mid-card champions, right? He defeated Will Ospreay, who was the international champion when they wrestled. And then he's wrestling Okada here. He doesn't defeat Okada, but that's because Matt and Nick Jackson, please don't find me. Matthew and Nicholas Jackson end up disrupting and ruining what was a great main event between Swerve and Okada. Let me tell you, before Matthew and Nicholas Jackson disrupted this match, this was a banger of a match, and it was awesome to watch. It was an awesome TV main event, just amazing. AEW just really allows these wrestlers to cultivate their own matches and gives them the freedom to put them in a ring the bell, and let the magic happen. So when you see a match that's good on paper, like Swerve Strickland versus Kazuchika Okada, you know it's going to cook, and it did cook. But of course, this episode of AEW Dynamite ends with a DQ finish, and it ends with all members of Team AEW and Team Elite wrestling, because next week in the main event, Team Elite will take on Team AEW in the Blood and Guts match. I'm very excited for this stuff, guys. I think AEW is doing a great job. They're doing a great job building up to All in Wembley Stadium. It looks like it's going to be a monster card, just a complete monster card. You got Swerve versus Bryan Danielson. You got Mariah May versus Tony Storm. Not confirmed yet, but you got Mercedes Moné versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. We'll see what else is to come of all this. It's going to be a banger of a show. This was a banger AEW Dynamite. I enjoy AEW Dynamite for what it is, and no, it's not as good as WWE, but it's still very enjoyable. Anyways, guys, that's a summary and analysis, and I'm going to get my butt to bed.